Hey everybody, I'm George Rouse. I am here with my good friend Nathan Brooks at Last Chance Archery because we have a new product.
This is the LCA UTG, which means Universal Tuning Gauge. So basically what this is a very specific dialed in for serious archers square. So your traditional square has lots of different little features to it that we've come to know and love, but this adds a lot of new age technology.
This is more compound specific bow square.
It is. It could be used for a recurve, but definitely more for the compound shooter.
Right.
So not only is it for the compound shooter, but what I would also say is that with this tuning gauge, you will be able to know some things that you didn't know before that could be really important on how you perform from bow to bow to bow.
Setting up backup bows, rebuilding your current bow, all that stuff. So you could have a log, because all of y'all keep a log, right? Right. Yes. Okay. So you can have a log that has all your important measurements and everything down, especially that bow that is just like, this bow is perfect. So you can get all your measurements, write it down. So then when you have to rebuild the bow, new strings or whatever, you can get back to your starting settings much quicker without all the trial and error, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, one of the big things that today's bow technology is doing is it's changing really fast. And the old school measurements that we used to use back in the Stone Ages on how we measure all the specs on a bow, yes, they're relative, but they're not as informative as what they should be.
Right.
Because, for instance, let's just go right into the axle to axle length of a bow.
Right.
When you put a cam on that bow that's the size of a hubcap, that really changes the overall length of that bow. So it acts much different than one that's, say, maybe even longer with a smaller cam.
So one axle to axle, if you had two bows the same axle to axle, they could have a completely different string angle and overall bow length at full draw.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that string angle is really important in how comfortable the bow feels to you. And you know, from everyday conversations, I get people telling me that they can shoot a 35-inch bow, but they struggle with a 31-inch bow. And so the interesting thing about that is maybe they tried a 31-inch bow 15 years ago.
Right.
Not a 31-inch bow in 2025.
Right.
And
because
so
the cams are generally bigger nowadays than they were back when. I mean, the bows we used to shoot had little round wheels on about that big.
Exactly. Exactly. So what the UTG will do is it will give you that string angle that you are comfortable with at full draw, so you can make an accurate measurement and know exactly what that is from bow to bow to bow. So yes, you might like a 35-inch axle to axle bow, but do you have any idea what it actually feels like, that string angle as it comes across your face?
Right. And the fit means a lot to the overall stability of the bow. That's one of my big things. If something hurts when you're shooting archery, the fit's not right.
That's right.
If you're crazy unsteady for some reason, like this bow won't hold, something about the fit isn't agreeing with you. So once you find the right fit, string angle according to your face, you know, the overall holding weight, you know, all that stuff. Once you find the right fit that really holds well, that's something that you can measure with this tool to make sure that you can always go back to that with different brand bows or different bows within a certain brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what the UTG is also going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to set your peep sight height, your kisser button height, your nose button height, whatever you use, at rest and at full draw. And so that's really important to know those measurements as well, because when you change bow models, that full draw measurement is really important as opposed to the static measurement as the bow is at rest, because they'll be totally different.
Yep.
So that also helps you when you're needing a new sight tape, setting up those target bows, and you're trying to really dial in that sight tape. That's a really important
when
measurement.
you're making a sight tape, the measurements that you put into the sight tape mean a lot. If you're going to get marks that are dead on, and only way you're going to beat the top guys these days is to have better marks than they have. So having some mechanism to make sure that all the measurements that you have in the bow and your marks are perfect, that means what you get back, all those little intermediary distances will be correct without any extra fiddling.
That's exactly right. So with the tool also, I set it as a square. So when you're setting up a bow right from the beginning, it's a really good tool to get say your arrow set, whatever size that is, whether it be like a 1/66 diameter or a 27 diameter, you can install that to the tool and then measure and make sure that it's in relationship to the burger hole the way you want it. So personally myself, I don't like for an arrow to be below the burger hole, the bottom of the arrow. So if I'm setting up a 1/66 arrow and I initially make that setup and then I want to change that bow later for a 27 diameter, I have to move the loop up in order to be a consistent fit from the way it was set up with my 1/66 versus my 27. So this tool will help you see that really quick right off the bat where you need to set that measurement.
So we're going to go through all the different things. We're going to actually do it on a bow, but this thing will go. It'll clip to your arrow. It'll clip to your string, so you can take your various measurements. It'll do your rest angle for right hand or left hand. It even has that magic 13/16. You know, apparently every bow in the world, the middle of it is 13/16.
It's amazing.
So we have that, so you can put that thing in there and set your arrow rest to a really good starting point center. And these things with just a little thumb knob, they slide up and down, so you can check your measurements and all that. What did I forget?
I think you got it all. Oh, it's also got a nice ruler on it running both directions. So that really helps with, you know, if we just want to figure out, hey, how long is this nock? Oh, well, that's going to be about a 1/2 inch long. Yeah. Just handy to have a ruler there.
Super nice. And having something, you can have this dangling from your quiver, and if you knock your bow over and you're not real sure, you can take this, stick it up to your sight, stick it up to your wrist. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. So you know the next shot's probably going to hit.
That's right.
Right. So that works out pretty good. So let's go to the bow press. And let's take a look at the various different methods of measurement and all the various things. And Nathan's going to walk us through how to do these things to make sure that our bows, bow to bow, are going to be right using the UTG. All right, everybody, we're here at the bow press. Nathan's going to show us how to use the tool with the various setup things that we do so that you can see how useful this thing is and how you can make a couple of bows have the same settings.
Right.
So what are we going to do first?
So to start with, I'm going to pick the arrow that I want to use, and this is actually a 1/66 diameter or a 4 mil. And I would take the arrow, slide it into the slot here, and what I want to do is get a location that's 90 degrees or square, using the square to the burger hole. Now arrow size is going to make a difference in that, so you want to use the arrow size that you're going to be using. This is a 1/66. So I'm going to snap it on the string here, and then I'm going to slide this all the way up against the string to see the 90-degree square setting. I'm going to tighten that down. And then what I'm going to do is I want this arrow basically no lower than the bottom of my burger hole. And the reason for that is when your fletching is on the arrow, you need enough clearance that it goes past the shelf good. And I have a little bit of an issue too, where even my finger kind of gets in the way from time to time. So I want the arrow up high enough to be able to clear all of those things. So I'm going to go at 90 degrees and I'm going to slide that arrow down right there. You see it's square to the string, square across here, and now it's right at the bottom of the burger hole. I'm going to take the marker, make a little silver mark right here above and below that knot. And then I'll be able to tie my tie knots in right there and then put my D-loop on. And also I can use this square by removing the arrow and just clip it right onto the string. You have an arrow groove and a string groove. And so you can run this right into the string here, and tighten it up. And you could also square it off of there if you didn't have the arrow. So again, I'm just going to eyeball the bottom of the square itself right across from the burger hole, and then that right there itself is square already because it's stuck in the string groove and it's tight. I can see exactly where that's at, and I know that the center of my arrow is going to be right there. So then I could take a nock, snap the nock on the string right there, and then I would be able to make my tie knots above and below that nock and then put my D-loop on that way as well.
So there you go. It's that easy. You just set your square, make sure that you use the tool to create 90 degrees with whatever size arrow rest that you're going to use, make your marks, and you're ready to put your D-loop on. That's super easy.
Off to the races.
All right, everybody, we figured out where the nocking point needs to be. Now we're going to set the tool up on the arrow so that we can measure the angle of the string and figure out which groove does the peep sight need to be in, and we can use the tool to set it to a peep sight. Like if you already know what your basic full draw peep sight measurement is, you can just set the peep and everything while the bow is in full draw.
So I'm going to make this a little easier. These just pull right off. I'm going to set those aside, and now the tool itself is a little bit easier to use without those on there. And what I want to do is mark the arrow from the arrow groove. I'm going to measure it from the throw to the nock out here about 6 inches, and that way we have a good look at these measurements for our string angle. Now something I like to do here is, because it actually has a good amount of weight to it as far as the tool itself goes, it's well built.
Right.
And so I want to push this up against the string. So I loosen that up until I get it all the way up against the string and then tighten it up, and then it basically stands right there. So on here you can see that at this draw length, this axle to axle length and brace height is its 40-degree string angle.
Right, so that way you know which groove to use for your peep sight and how to make sure that that peep sight you're looking through, because a lot of those peep sights are long, and you want to look through that peep sight where it's on just kind of a straight angle through the string, so you got a straight view to your sight.
You don't want to look thugh that peep sight, especially if you've got a clarifier or verifier in there at an angle through that glass,
right?
Because that could really be bad. But this gives you a quick reference to what that string angle is, and then the peep manufacturers, a lot of them even have reference charts that tell you if it's this axle to axle length or that axle to axle length, use this angle. But that's just a reference.
Right, because it's all based on draw length, axle to axle, size of the cams, the whole bit.
And so a good example of how this really varies is this particular bow is 31¼ inches axle to axle. I have another bow here that's 33 inches axle to axle. So in comparison, these two bows you would think are much different, an inch and 3/4 different. But actually, when you set these bows down on the ground like this, top to bottom, tip to tip, they measure the exact same tip to
the outside.
Yes,
Okay,
tip to tip length. And when we put these in the draw board here and we measure the string angle at the exact same draw lengths, actually, this bow, the 133 here that I have is 33-inch axle to axle length. It actually has a sharper string angle at the exact same draw length that this bow does at 31¼ inches axle to axle. So you can really see fast how you could be maybe misled.
Right. And if a guy decides that a 37.5-inch string angle is perfect for his face fit on the string, then he's got a gauge to measure, is this particular bow that he's shopping, is this going to be the right string angle at full draw for him? Because fit makes a difference in how stable that the bow is going to be.
George, I have a really quick story I want to tell there. So years ago, I was building bowstrings. I had a gentleman from North Carolina call me. And he said, I've been shooting with Levi Morgan. And Levi says that the Apex, the Matthews Apex, this is a long time ago, is the best bow he's ever shot. So I just ordered one, and I need to get a new set of strings and cables for it. I said, okay. So I start building him strings and cables. As we continue to talk, I find out he's a 27.5-inch draw. Levi's 6'5".
He's a giant.
So different in these two individuals. And he was taking a reference from Levi, one of the best shooters in the world, obviously, as to which bow he should buy. But he was so much smaller, it doesn't correlate.
It just
doesn't
correlate. A bow that big on a smaller guy with a shorter draw length isn't going to be the same.
No.
Right? So if you look at it as scale, right? If you're 6'5", a bigger bow is going to fit you a lot better.
Right.
If you're 5'0", a smaller bow is going to fit you better. So keeping it within scale is going to help you with a much better fit.
Again, probably just more archery geek nerd stuff here. But so as a competitive shooter my whole life, I always look up to the guys that are really just dominating. And I always want to think, how do I get better? And you chase those guys. And so one of the things I looked at a long time ago was Tim Gillingham, who is also a giant of an individual. And I started thinking about what is his string angle at full draw, because he's shooting a bow that's 37 inch. axle to axle. But what's he actually dealing with? Because he's a 33-inch draw length. He's actually even longer than that if he can shoot it.
Yeah.
But he's maxing the bows out. And so you start thinking in relationship to what they're dealing with. Of course, there's a power stroke issue and all kinds of archery geek nerd stuff here that we could just dive deep into the bushes and try and figure out what makes a shooter a certain way. But I started thinking about those things. And that's where this really started clicking to me, like, no one knows what their string angle actually is. They can tell you how it feels. They can tell you if they like it or not, but they don't know those string angles. And so this should really help being able to set up bow to bow, model to model, and have a better understanding of your equipment and you as a shooter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And another thing too, is if you want to be like Levi Morgan, you're probably not going to be like Levi Morgan just by buying the gear, you know, that he has. But if you ask Levi Morgan, what is his practice routine? How much does he shoot? What kind of drills does he do? How does he maintain his overall accuracy in practice? You're probably going to get closer to being who you're going to be. You can't be Levi Morgan. He's already being Levi Morgan. But you can figure out who you're going to be by copying his practice routine and how much he shoots, how he logs his stuff, the whole bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have these angle measurements here that gives you the angle of a string. Nathan, where is this angle measurement measured from?
So what we're referencing is how the string feels on your face in relationship to the arrow. So if this is your baseline and 90 degrees would be like this, like the square is off of the arrow.
So it's off the arrow line, not the actual overall string angle.
Not this angle, but this angle.
And for the most part, too, it's a reference measurement, right?
Yes.
You're going to say, well, it's 40 degrees, but you're going to use that 40-degree number. It's just like, that fits my nose. I don't have to tip my head back. I don't have to tip my head forward to touch my nose to string, if that's what you want. So that you always know that 40 fits you.
Yes.
So then when you're trying different bows, you can make sure it's somewhere in the general neighborhood of 40 and you know it's going to be a fit that you're going to like.
Right. And you could also even dictate your draw length a little bit. You know, I've found that some bows I shoot better a little longer than others, which could mean that the bow aims a little bit better. Now we're getting to a little bit higher level of archery here. But I mean, I've varied my draw length almost 3/4 of an inch over the span of 20-something years of shooting.
Oh, big time.
Just because one bow aimed better, it was a longer bow, I shot it at a shorter draw length. And possibly, back then I didn't even realize that maybe it was because that string angle was closer to this 47 or 50 measurement. So it was out here in front of my face and I needed it shorter with a longer loop. So it wasn't jammed up in my face, but a shorter axle-to-axle length bow has this lower string angle here, you know, maybe 35 degrees or so, and it fits a little bit better. So I pull a little bit farther just because it's fitting my anchor a little bit better on my face.
In my particular style, I don't really prioritize a nose touch. So on my target bow, it will touch. Just a whisker, just the micro hairs of my nose will be there on the string. But then my hunting bow, it's a much sharper string on my nose, just doesn't touch.
Yes.
You know, I just look through the peephole, put the pin on it, and let him have it.
Yeah, and so I would have to say the same thing. I don't ever want to put myself in a box and say I'm like this exact draw length because I know I can vary that just slightly. But at the same time, I'm definitely not 3 inches different one way or the other.
Right.
You know, so
the distance from here to here, you know, at full draw isn't really going to change.
Right.
But with different brace heights and different axle lengths, how the limbs are set on the bow and all that will make a fit change with your face.
Right.
That one bow might feel better and aim better with a different angle where another one won't.
Different loop length, different release length from here to the hook of the release. Different type of release, handheld to wrist strap. You know, all that makes a little bit of difference. So this just really helps you hone in on what that particular setup is, so you know when you go to set up another one, you can reference these.
Yeah, and that's really what we're saying here is we're not saying that your bow must be 40 inches angle we're saying that once you find a setting that's super stable, shoots really good, and you're having your best day ever with this bow, you can now whip this out and measure all the particulars so that you know where do you need to be should you ever change this bow or get a different bow. And that just gives you something to hold on to.
Right, exactly, because that's knowledge you need to know.
Yeah.
So George, I'm going to take the reference sliders now and slide them on the UTG and measure my peep side height. I want to go ahead and slide both on here, and something that's really nice about this is that you can turn these either direction, and so you can have a pointer up or pointer down either way, and that might be helpful for you as you're making reference to nose button height or peep height or the kisser button, whatever you're doing there. So you can change that, but I want to slide this on here, and then I want to be able to slide this right up the arrow. So I loosen this up just a little bit, and I'll get right to the center of my peep side height. And this is usually a really tough, aggravating thing to have to do with a tape measure.
And if you're going to use one of those sight marker apps, that measurement has to be exact.
Yes.
Or your middle measurements your middle distances are going to be weird. And that makes it really easy to be more exact with your initial measurement.
Yeah, and so I just use right off the bottom of the reference slider, and I can see that that is set up right at 3 and, we're going to call it 11/16.
Yep.
So I can also just continue to slide this up the arrow shaft, and then I can reference my nose button, know exactly how high that is. I'm going to set that right there at about 2 inches, and then I could easily set a kisser button height, anything that that I'm changing from this setup to the next setup. I can easily make the other setup. If I'm setting up a backup bow, I got it nailed at full draw.
Right.
So it's so quick and easy, none of the guesswork. And again, going back to those sight tapes, I got a sight tape for this bow. I now have a sight tape for that bow because I know it's all spot on.
Right. Get speed the same, peep height the same, all that, and everything should be dang close, if not balls on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, this thing does so much. It does so much stuff. How much would you pay for an item like this? But don't answer now because there's more.
That's right.
Right. So check this out. You can also, once you've established what blade angle that you want with your bow, you can also use this slider that's marked on the back. Both sliders are marked with the blade angles for right hand or left hand. And you can see that this one, the blade angle is at 40 degrees. Now, you can just use that as a reference measurement. But if you look at this rest, what brand rest is this?
It's a Shrew.
It's a Shrew, okay. And then you look on the indication of rest angle on the Shrew, and it actually says 40. They agree, so that's really good.
Really nice.
And so you can do your blade angle and also that magic measurement, that 13/16. You see there's a little dot right here on there that measures 13/16. So I just flush that up with the riser and slide it up. And you see I can set the left-right on my arrow rest to be right at 13/16. And that's a great little starting point to figure out your left and right of your arrow rest.
Yeah, and there's actually something else.
Oh, there's more?
So check this out. If you are in the business of tuning bows and you want to check your cam lean after you've got this thing nailed.
Okay.
So let me tell you, you just slide this off, and then you take this, slide it right up against your cam, just like this.
And you can take an actual measurement of your cam lane. Look at that.
And you can see exactly where it's at. Top and bottom, either way, you got it nailed.
Fries, shake, and an apple pie, all in one.
I'm sold, bud. And if I want to measure my brace height, make sure that I have that correct, your measurement is actually, again, from the arrow groove itself. So I'm going to change from the string groove over here to the arrow groove, tighten it all the way down. It might be a little bit loose on there, but I'm going to slide this down, keep my fingers on that, and then I can see that I'm at 6 1/4 on this brace height measurement.
So that is it in the nutshell. This is the universal tuning gauge from Last Chance Archery. You can get this at lastchancearchery.com. It's a fantastic tool. And We'll see you next time.